Great. So welcome to our first lecture, the Design Media Arts Lecture Series 2008-2009. We are very honored to have as our guest lecturer tonight from Japan, the designer Kenya Hara, who is also professor at the Musabi University in Tokyo. This makes him both a designer and an academic, a maker and a thinker. As a maker, he is best known for his design for the opening and closing ceremonies of the Nagano Winter Olympics in 2006. Also, Professor Hara is very well known for his work for Muji, a beautifully simple but at the same time so sophisticated brand of useful consumer products. I personally love everything Muji and I collect them. And I know a lot of people that do so. As a thinker, Kenya Hara has reached a worldwide audience with his international touring exhibits, Redesign, Haptic, and Senseware, each title representing a keyword that embraces the ever-changing value of existence. The central thesis in his work is that to engage in the act of design, our man-made environment must also be examined, felt, and understood. A more in-depth look at these concepts and their relationship to one another can be found in his recent book, Designing Design, of which an English language version was published by Lars Mueller Publishers in 2007. A line by my favorite philosopher, Henry Bergson, came to mind when I was contemplating the work of Kenya Hara. He thinks like a man of action, he acts like a man of thought. It is as much an inspiring motto as it is a mysterious riddle. And tonight we will witness it here, embodied by Kenya-san. Please welcome Kenya Hara.
Good afternoon, everyone. So it's a great pleasure to be here with you today. So I came from Tokyo, and the design is my perpetual concern. Today, I'm going to focus on three topics. One is haptic. The second is senseware. These two are the foundations of my recent exhibitions. The third topic is emptiness. To illustrate the third, I'll talk about the vision of Muji, a client of mine. For Muji, I'm in charge of art direction and communication design. Let me begin with haptic. The term haptic means stimulating or present to the touch. In 2004, I produced an exhibition based on this theme. About 20 of the leading creators participated, including architects, product designers, fashion designers, a traditional craftsman, and the design team of a high-tech firm. I asked each to use haptic as their motivation and design a product for daily use. What I wanted was not something that began with a sketch of the form, but a design whose first priority was a degree of sensory stimulation it effected. That is, the creators began with the concept of haptic rather than with a sketch. Here are some of the results. This is my work, the exhibition logo. The hair expresses the haptic logotype. I think you get the idea at a glance. Kosuke Tsumura, a fashion designer, made these hairy lanterns. To make them very strong, he reinforced washi paper with silk. Then each lantern was given a wig of hair implants hand-tied one by one. They give off a mysterious atmosphere. When the light is on, exposing the pores, they look almost ominous. So they are much more than simply a home for light. They have a mysterious presence and excite our senses of touch. Graphic designer Shinsobue made these coasters. In a group, they look like a frog's eggs. Each one holds an array of small tadpole-like creatures. It is like a puddle of liquid we might find on a lab table. Imagine being about to put a glass of water on this liquid. It is thrilling, right? Sobue's design is an example of an element that is neither form nor color, stimulating the senses. He told me a story to explain his inspiration. One summer day, he was taking a nap. His arm started on each, and he woke up. He found a butterfly laying eggs on his arm in a nice, neat array. Shocking, isn't it? It suddenly thrilled us to see something organic like a butterfly's eggs geometrically arrayed. That's where he got his idea from this piece. And a design like this doesn't come to be unless we are inspired by a haptic idea. This clock was designed by the British product designer Jasper Morrison. It's made of a extremely soft paper called wavy and use molding technologies. Wavy is a very thin paper that's very elastic too. The wall gives it structural tension, and the embossed paper is haptic. When I asked Jasper to join the haptic exhibition, he had a great response. He said, "Haptic means to have the senses draw, right? Like when we are hungry, we salivate at the sight of grilled meat. That's a gustatory response." But Morrison meant haptic as experience of seeing something that makes all the senses draw. You know? Quite right. Make all the senses draw. I think this kind of sensation that is beginning to fade in modern urban existence. A group from the Panasonic design company came up with this remote control. It is made of biogel, a very soft material. When it's off, it's limp like a Salvador Dali's melted clock. When it's on, it looks like it's sleeping, inhaling and exhaling, inhaling and exhaling. When you reach out to touch it, the sensors alert it to light up, and it immediately stiffens. Let me show you a video. Here is another product design that focuses on the sense of touch rather than form. What do you think? Shuhei Hasado is a traditional plaster craftsman living in the mountains of central Japan. But he is an innovator too. He works with a creative architect by plastering clay over glass. I asked him to plaster the surface of geta, or traditional Japanese sandals. This pair is growing moss, it seems, rather than being plastered. It thrills me to imagine slipped barefoot into geta of wet moss. There are a lot of different kinds here. One pair has pulp fiber. Another is covered in dry leaves. Hasado's design awakened the soles of our feet. Mathieu Manche is a French artist living in Japan. He made an electric outlet with a very interesting material. This is medical silicone. It is usually used for adding onto the damaged body parts or replacing lost ones. So, these outlets seem to be alive, or still growing, branching out. Touching them is just like touching a human body. Product designer Shunji Yamanaka came up with a floating canvas. The small paper canvas is shaped like a water strider. It is sprayed with a liquid that makes it repel water to a high degree. In the center of the paper creature is a small stick of a magnetic iron. If you put a group of them on the surface of the water, you can control them with a magnet under the basin. They loaded in harmony, fluent and smooth. This surprising accord is really haptic, because you see the senses of touch is also invoked by smooth sensations, not only by the something rough or bristled. The artist Yasuhiro Suzuki has reproduced a cabbage in a paper clay. He did it by making a silicone mold of the leaves of real cabbage. This one weighs as much as real cabbage too. Suzuki's cabbage can be taken apart, turning into a set of paper vessels. Imagine having a party where these are plates and bowls. Naoto Fukasawa made these juice boxes. Here we have a strawberry juice box. And here is banana juice box. The structure is a usual Tetra box, but the surface has a texture and the design of a banana. Here's a kiwi juice box. Flock printing deposits fine fiber all over the package. The second object from the front is a real kiwi. The textures are very much alike. We also have a soy milk box that textured like tofu. If you sipped soy milk through a straw from this package, you'd feel like you're drinking it directly from a block of tofu. And now, this is my design. It's a water pachinko machine, or if you prefer, a water pinball machine. It is made of paper with superhydrophobic coating, so it repels water. Just as dew on lotus leaves, water balls up on the surface. I made a complex structure out of paper. I designed obstacles to lead the water droplets along various paths, just like a pinball machine directs metal balls. When you drop water from above, it beads up. And this is called the lotus effect. The water balls then roll down and around islands of stoppers. Let's see it on video. The live performance is many times more haptic than this visual account, of course. There are many other products for the haptic exhibition, but I'd like to move on. The concept of haptic leads the idea, but we don't only design form, creating a shape on an object. That we not only design form, creating a shape for an object, we also design how it feels. A human being is a bundle of delicate sensors. Science does more than advance the evolution of materials and media. It also helps us understanding the senses, where they may be hidden a whole new and discovered territory, another American continent. Haptic means another design attempt to expand what I think of as the world atlas of the senses. From haptic, I'd like to move to my second topic, senseware. Senseware was the title of the Tokyo Fiber exhibition, and that featured artificial fibers. This is a kind of the practical version of haptic exhibition. I define senseware as a medium that is familiar and awakes the senses. Have you ever touched the stoneware from the Stone Age? When you actually touch it, you will understand that the agreeable weight, hardness, and the texture of stone roused the Stone Age people into activity. The material itself acted as a primary factor in driving culture during the Stone Age. Same is true of paper. Paper is white and crisp. This is its point. Paper is generally considered to be a printing media, and of course, it is a material that takes the form of seeds upon which we can print. But the things about paper, that inspired human was the property of its materiality, that is white and crisp. If paper was green and floppy like a vinyl, I might that culture wouldn't have developed so quickly. When white materials were not as plentiful in the environment, humans created a material that was bright, white, and nicely taught by going through a long process. The color white is awe-inspiring, but it is also very fragile and easily soiled. On this white, we drew letter and illustration in black ink. Think of this contrast. And this is a brilliant image, singular in human history. By senseware, I mean a medium that inspires human senses and creative activity. Like the stone of the Stone Age, or a paper that has driven the culture of printing. In the Tokyo Fiber exhibition, we dealt with artificial fibers as a senseware. As you know, these are both natural and artificial fibers. The latter are made of petroleum. Today, most of these produced for clothing are made in India and China, in low-wage countries. The artificial fiber produced in Japan are mostly used for industrial materials rather than clothing. Microfibers, carbon fibers, and aramid fibers are used for artificial hearts and blood vessels, or even aircraft bodies. But because Japan makes highly sophisticated, intelligent fibers, we may soon be able to get involved in fashion again. The Tokyo Fiber exhibition was designed as an international appeal by clearly visualizing this possibility anew in the world, close to the human skin. In other words, we recognize that artificial fiber and new senseware stimulating the human imagination, so we put together the Tokyo Fiber project to investigate their creative possibilities. Japanese companies also joined this exhibition as creators. There are architects and individual designers from many other fields, but also high-tech manufacturers like Sony, Honda, and Panasonic. This project was attempted to trace a new relationships among humans, fibers, and environment, and explore their future using artificial fibers, which has evolved to such a level to be called intelligent fibers. Now, let's look at the proposals. This from Honda is a line of external skin for cars. It is supposed that by 2020, cars will run on fuel other than gasoline, so we won't need internal combustion engines. This is not going to be in some remote future. Cars will run clean and quietly without putting out CO2. The most feasible alternative energy is hydrogen gas. Others would be vegetable alcohol, bioethanol, and electricity. Also, thanks to progress in crash avoidance system and navigation systems, cars won't crash into each other, and the role of the driver will be less essential. Under these circumstances, the exterior skin of the car doesn't have to be a hard and heavy metal. Cars could be covered with a soft skin like those of living beings. 20th century products had hard, stiff exteriors. It's very likely that soft exteriors will be the future. Car will run silently, so we may have to have some way to showing they are actually running. The Honda solution is not for toy cars, but shows the possibilities for the actual cars. This is a serious proposal. When you get tired of the red exterior, you can replace it with a white one, with a zip of the zipper. Imagine that. Sony came up with TV. And TVs today are hard and having been growing larger and flatter. This solution is the opposite. Sony's TV is flexible, small, and round like a rubber ball. Put it by your bedside, and it delivers images like a little bird chirping. Today, as images flood our lives, we wonder about the originality of their delivery method. This may be the nice tool for sharing personal images with a friend. You switch channels on the TV by gently holding its tail between your fingers. Even consider the material or the fibers. Notice that the flat material has not been sewn into a 3D shape, but rather the shape of a TV has been knitted directly from the fibers, all the way to the tip of the earphone. This mannequin floating in air is a work of the artist Yasuhiro Suzuki. It is dressed in an ultra-thin super organza fiber. It is 1/5 the thickness of the thinnest nylon stockings. The fiber is almost weightless. When it's injected with helium, the mannequin floats high, standing still in the air on its own buoyancy. Suzuki's piece is not for practical use, but demonstrates the possibility of ultra-thin fibers. Panasonic came up with a new heating device that uses the fake fur. It's to be used on the sofa. It keeps you warm like a pet using a tube heater technology. The switch feels like a paw pad of a dog or a cat, and the heater is covered in fur right down to the cord. Strangely, it's like having a real animal nearby. Takuya Onishi is an architect based in Bangkok. He dreams of a heli-drop hospital, one that would immediately erect itself on the spot and expand with compressed air. This piece is clothing that is also a shelter. It expands with compressed air too. Look at this video. What do you think? If you combine together two shelters with their zippers on the bottom, you get a space like a tent. It compacts like this. This piece is made of a thin, light, airtight fabric. The product designer, Shunji Yamanaka, created an interactive robot named Ephira. Its tentacles are like those of the sea urchin. They poked out into a cylinder-shaped knit fiber called super knit. It's highly elastic and returns its original shape quickly. If it is expanding and you touch the tip of its tentacles, it responds immediately by retracting like a snail. Finally, I'd like to introduce a collaboration between myself and the media artist Taro Suzuki. Here, water is sprayed up from behind the water repellent fiber. The water itself then becomes a Tokyo Fiber logo. Because the surface is at an incline, the drops merge together to form drops of a certain size, just roll off thanks to the gravity. Have a look at this video. Once again. See how water droplets appear one after another repeatedly, forming the logo's letter. The drops that are under control are beautiful like a diamond. This piece is due to the high-tech fiber treated with nano-level water repellencies. What do you think of the Sensewear exhibition? It was held in Tokyo last year. In last June, it traveled to Paris and attracted great interest. We are still in the experimental phase of demonstrating the low power of intelligent fibers. We envision launching it as a formal exhibition in next year. Our primary goal was to explore new relationships among humans, fibers, and the environment. going beyond the obvious border of apparel. Now, I think we will get the goal in sight. In this event, the high-tech manufacturers like Sony and Honda have confirmed the possibility of intelligent fibers. Going on, we believe we can come up with a new vision for product manufacturing. I'd like to talk to you about emptiness next, which relates to the Muji products. Muji products were first released in Japan in 1980. They was a result of an effort to cut waste from production through packaging. And so, the Muji's aesthetic was born from the concept of economy. Muji products are simple, but it's a different simplicity from the way the term is defined in the West. So I'd like to replace the term simplicity with the word emptiness. Here is a poster for Muji's 2005 ad campaign. The photo shows a Muji's porcelain bowl in a traditional Japanese tea ceremony room. You can see both the room and the garden next to the tea house. The concept is that Muji is analogous with the idea of chanoyu, the tea ceremony. The tea ceremony symbolized a unique Japanese aesthetic, and that was fully formed in the 16th century. It is also a unique way of communicating through the manners of drinking tea. A tea ceremony is held inside a minimal space called the chashitsu, or tea room. You would think it is simple enough to entertain a guest with a bowl of tea in such a minimal space. But thanks to the concept of Rikyu, a genius of tea, the chanoyu, in fact, a powerful performance of communication that helps establish empathy between the host and his guest. I will explain this briefly, so please listen carefully. The small space in the tea house has no decoration. It is emptiness itself. This emptiness allows the space to become a location through the ingenuity of the host. It may be sitting under a cherry tree in full bloom, or the seashore. In other words, it's a small, empty theater. The master is a producer, entertaining his guests by serving tea. And the tea ceremony is like a theatrical performance. The point I'd like to stress here is a performance called mitate. Through the arrangement of the flowers or the display of a certain scroll painting, the master entertains his guest. these devices allow the guest to become aware that the very plain space carries a great significance. Mitate is this technique. In an empty space, you place a flat base, fill it with water, and spread the petals of cherry blossom on the water. And the setting is under a cherry tree in full bloom. This kind of mitate performance happens through the process of serving and being served tea. The chanoyu is a performance through which one becomes aware of an empty space that becomes an infinite number of images. It was a great master of tea practitioners, Rikyu, who discovered and practiced this method. Muji products are based on the same principle. All these goods are very minimum and empty. All these goods are used in Rikyu period. Muji products are based on the same principle. Just because something is simple doesn't mean a product with a simple form is beautiful or functional. But it always entails a quality of generosity. In a single simple product, anyone can discover an idiosyncratic way to use it for his own sake and with his own context. A couple of 18-year-olds will choose the same table as a couple of 60 years old because it fits their lifestyles. By not designing one table for the young and another for an older generation, we are free to have the table that will fit any interpretation. This interpretation of emptiness is a good description of the quality of Muji products. Muji products are defined not only by paring down the processes or simplifying the form. It is the generosity that responds to the mitate performances of each user. Emptiness is a distinguished Muji quality. This is example. This knife is simple. The shape of the handle is well thoughtful design, a perfect grip. This is empty. The handle receives any kinds of techniques of the chef in the Japanese restaurant. Do you understand the difference between the simple and emptiness?
Actually not. Can you say it again?
Hmm?
Can you say it again? Let me try to explain it again.
Okay, so this knife has a perfect grip. This design is very subtle, that has a very perfect grip. But this knife don't have a perfect grip, very plain. But you can grip this handle from any angles. This plain grips accept the many kind of skill, many kind of the skill of the Japanese chef in the Japanese restaurant. The emptiness is possibility of accepting many kinds of the, images or skills. You understand?
Yes.
Okay. We also see the concept of emptiness in Muji's communication design. Emptiness is communication means to dispatch no messages. Instead, we offer an empty vessel that accepts the images of beholders. It is quiet as opposed to loquacity. It is linked to quiet versus verbosity. Being quiet encourages our partner to talk with us. Effective communication does not depend on how wisely we talk to our partner, but how intensely we listen to him. Muji products allow the users to conjure up tremendous variety of images. Something of Muji that Muji products are simple. Other things, they are urbane or sophisticated. Some think of Muji products as ecologically friendly, and others low-priced. There are someone who consider Muji a Zen-based producer. Others like the unassuming feature of Muji products that helps them feel relaxed. Some even think Muji stands for the Japanese minimal design. However, Muji's advertisement uses none of these images, but it's receptive to all. And this is achieved not by sending a special particular message, but by offering an empty vessel. These posters are from Muji's 2003 campaign. On the horizon stands a solitary figure. And the posters were taken on the Bolivian Uyuni, one of the greatest salt lakes in the world, and also on the Mongol prairies. Both present a perfect horizon, the earth and the human being. These relate to the empty vessel. There is no copy, just a Muji logo. This way, they embrace the variety of images all sorts of people have of Muji. Anyone can relate his or her image of Muji to these visuals. Here are magazine ads. They have images of the product, so you might think of them as simply product ads, but they actually have the same concept of the horizon posters. Muji isn't the only one that uses a logo-only method. But Muji's ads don't launch that kind of power brand messages. Here is a message from a brand, and here are Muji's. You can see the concept of emptiness is quietly embedded in both product design and communication design. Now, I have introduced to you my focal themes of my work in recent years: haptic and senseware and emptiness. Haptic is not designed to create form, but the designing of senses or feeling. Senseware helps me inquire into media that inspire human senses and crystallize my idea about humans, fibers, and the environment through the practical project. The topic of emptiness deals with Muji's vision and its communication concept. Emptiness is not designed to create messages, but the designing of acceptance of variety of images and feelings. Well, this brings me to the end of my talk. I'd like to conclude my presentation by thanking you all for your kind attention. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think we're going to open the floor for questions, and you're going to be able to translate some of the questions.
All right, so if there are questions, I'll come around and bring the microphone to you. You can speak your speak your responses into the microphone, and then I'll do the interpreting if it's necessary. Any questions? Hands.
There is the concept of shibumi.
Shibumi.
That I interpret, there's many interpretations of it, but it seems that all throughout the work, there is that idea of a silent determination, which is how I understand shibumi. And I know that shibumi has different meanings according to if it's literature, if it's other areas. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, how that relates to the work.
So the wabi and the sabi and the shibumi is all from the one images. So the basic Japanese culture is deeply related with coolness, not hotness. So the shibumi may be deeply related with emptiness, I think. So the Japanese culture is influenced all over the world because Japan is the tip of the East Asia. And Japan is surrounded by the ocean. So Japan culture is always influenced from the other cultures, not only by China and Korea, but also the India and Russia and Polynesia. So, but in the end of the 15th century, Japan has avoided all the influence of the another cultures. Japan has to become very simple, very plain. Japan choose a way of its origin, become plain. Partially plain. The plainness is partially different from the concept of simplicity. The simplicity is find it in the recent ages, about 150 years ago. So people found the concept of simplicity in the moving of the modernization. The simple is very different from the plainness that we find in Japan. The shibumi and the wabi and emptiness and the sabi is deeply related to this kind of plainness. So, do you understand?
Yes, it's interesting. Because yes, I have read about the shibumi more in older stories and history, but it seems that it's still some of that simplicity, like for example, if some of the things about the wabi, that they show you a piece of wood with a nail, how the rust of the nail comes down, that there is a kind of imperfection and that it is accepted. So the simplicity is kind of also obviously taking from that plainness. It's difficult to understand the difference very clearly in terms of simplicity and the plain, and because I see a lot of what I understand as shibumi in the work, but I don't know, obviously as a
さん
Western.
ちょっとポイントを説明してくれますか。
アビとサビの違いはよくわからないし、シブに似てるんでしょうか。このイメージを見たらシブにが入ってるんじゃないかと思ってるみたいな感じで、だからもしかしたらアビとサビとシブにの
そうですね。
サイズ違います。
So even the Japanese people, it's very difficult to distinguish between the wabi and the shibumi and sabi. So I have to explore the difference by myself between the difference. Okay, I'm sorry, I can't distinguish the difference, but so shibumi is a feeling related with the taste. So, yeah, of course, all the senses combined together, but the shibumi is deeply related with tasting. And wabi and the sabi is, I think, for my opinion, it related with space and memory. But wabi and sabi and shibumi is founded. Those words is founded to illustrate the same feeling, I think.
If I could interject too, I'd just encourage everyone to be sort of very open about the questions and to ask not only specific questions about the images, but perhaps about the Muji as a company or the projects themselves, or Hara-san as well. He has a very interesting background. So please feel free to bring questions from a sort of broad range.
May I say?
It's not directly a question. It's more another, let's say, way to give you another chance to elaborate on something what I find interesting, and you probably know much better or much more about it than I do. There is probably no point in simplicity without a really high degree of craftsmanship. And the craftsmanship is the base for any kind of simplification or reducing things, boiling them to the minimal possible thing they could potentially be. So what is your experience in your culture with this, and how much do you believe that this high level of craftsmanship we know is provided in the Japanese culture? How you see that maintained in the future?
So I understand that 70%.
クラフトマンシップはそうです。
わかります。
クラフトマンシップとそれにシンプリシティの関わりことだからデザインがシンプルなエンティネスが入ってても、それにしても実際に本物を作るのに偉いクラフトマンシップが必要とされてるんじゃないですか。そういうふうにしたら日本ではなんかそのような、ちょっと微妙な言い方なんだけれども、もしかしたら日本でそういうクラフトマンシップはなんかレベルが出たりですか、そのデザインのシンプルさやエンプティさ。よくつければ日本語でも答えていいし、
というか、クラフトスマンシップは、まあ、シンプルにもエンプティにも関わってるんだけど、そのクラフトマンシップが日本の場合はどうなんですね。
Just to clarify from my understanding your question, you're saying that design of this kind of simplicity, design of this kind of emptiness requires a certain sort of craftsmanship in order to enact it or to make it reality.
A high degree of perfection.
Right, a high degree of perfection. And your question relating that to Japan, are you asking about craftsmanship in Japan and whether he feels that?
Actually, what interests me the most is if this level of craftsmanship and perfection in the making will be maintained in the Japanese culture also for the future. We
In the
know that
future.
it's there right now and was there in the past, but will it be there also in 50 years from now?
前には今にも日本のクラスメンシップは最高だということが分かっていますけれども、将来にもなんか同じレベルで続いているそうですか。パーフェクショニズム。
Okay, can I answer by Japanese? 日本のクラフトマンシップもヨーロッパのクラフトマンシップもね、中国のクラフトマンシップも同じようなレベルにはあると思うんですね。
First off, I feel that the levels of craftsmanship in Japan and in Europe and elsewhere are more or less on par at the moment. I think he's going to.
だけどもエンプティネスとシンプルに関して言えばそれは少し違うんですと。それはそのクラフトマンシップの関わり方の問題ではなくて、このものの受け止め方の問題が違う。で日本のクラフトマンシップも、ヨーロッパも中国も昔から良かったけども、今はどこの国も危機に瀕していると思います。
In terms of craftsmanship, even though the levels are the same in various areas that he's naming, Europe, China, and Japan, in terms of craftsmanship vis-a-vis concepts of emptiness or a kind of profound simplicity, he feels that it's not just so much a level of craftsmanship at the level of human skills or something like that, but it's actually a way of understanding the object to be created that is extremely important, and that's why he feels that Japan has been successful with this so far.
そうね。将来的に。
これからっていう。予言のことになるんですけれども、なんか。
そうね。日本のクラフトマンシップですか。そうね。クラフトマンシップということに関しては、とても難しくて、産業とそのクラフトマンシップの関係がいい関係であれば残ってるけども、クラフトマンシップっていうのは本当に2世代ぐらいで完全になくなっちゃうんですよね。そういう局面に世界の各地があると。つまりもう今のプロダクツの作り方を見るとクラフトマンシップっていうものがいらなくなっているような世界なんで、これはそういうものをどういうふうに産業の中に取り込んでいくかっていうのはもう無地だけじゃなくて日本だけじゃなくて世界中の問題だと思いますよ。
In terms of speculating a bit about the future, which is also kind of the second part of your question, he's saying that when we consider issues of craftsmanship as a way of embodying or kind of manifesting design, making it present in our world, we also have to think not only about craftsmanship as a sort of high-level skill, but also about manufacturing. Because obviously the relationship between manufacturing, craftsmanship, and design is becoming an increasingly important issue. And he's saying that worldwide, not just in Japan, but pretty much everywhere, there's become an increasingly wide gap in between manufacturing sectors and what we might refer to as craftsmanship. And that's a problem that they're going to have to constantly be vigilant about, constantly dealing with in Japan. But again, he doesn't see that as exclusive to Japan, but as more of a globalized phenomenon.
So about the difference between the simplicity and emptiness, series visuals. So there's not so many space to explain these visuals, but mankind likes very complicated decoration, because this kind of complicated decoration is very deeply related with the force. This kind of decoration is produced to appear the force or the force of the nation. So in China and in India, in Islam and in Europe, the condition is the same. So, but about 150 years ago, the humankind find the value of simple. The simple is find recently. So, and this is the simplicity we all saying today. But this is not simple. This is emptiness. Because Japan, I explained already that Japan is the tip of the end of the Asia, Eurasia. Eh? So Japan has influenced all over the world. So, but once we have to abandon every influence from the world. So we found this kind of emptiness. So this is empty, and this is simple. That's very different, I think. Of course, the craftsmanship, about the craftsmanship, all of products needs a very highly craftsmanship, of course, but craftsmanship is diminishing these days. That is because of the structure of making products is changed. So we have to think more about the so the condition that craftsmanship belongs to. So.
Thanks. I really enjoyed that talk. And as a consumer of Muji products, your description of making all of the senses drool, I think, is an apt description of going into the store. I find myself wanting products like pencil sharpeners, things that the shredders that I would never sort of need, but the presentation in the store elicits a desire both visually and sort of sensorially. I had a question about the presentation, and I appreciated the sort of background on the haptic thinking. And I had a question that has to do with the distinction between the products and the design of Muji and the communication or advertising. And I think there's an inherent paradox or contradiction, because I felt like the design of the products was about a kind of eliciting a haptic response or dealing with the senses, the material, the smell, the cosmetics, and they're used in the sort of everyday experience in the kitchen, in the bathroom, traveling, but the advertising, the communication is absolutely devoid of human touch or the remnants. You don't see the used bowls, or you don't see the actual toiletries being sort of disposed of, so the advertising is completely devoid of the human touch or use of the product. So I just saw that as a kind of paradox in the campaign or the communication versus the design of the product, and I just wondered if you had a comment about that.
デザインとプレゼンテーションの方法とかの格差についてなんですけれども、でプロダクトのデザインにはすごいハプティック的な考え方が入れてるっていうことがよく分かってるんですけど、それはすごい好きなんですけれども、で反対にちょっと矛盾してるんですかね。広告とか、その全然ハプティックのところはないんじゃないですか。例えば人間の使ったっていう商品とか、入ってないんじゃないですかね。なんか例えば使われたばっかりっていう状態とか、その瞬間とか見せないので、そのハプティックさは入ってるんですかね。
ハプティックと無地に関係があるかどうかっていうのは僕もよくわからない。ハプティックはハプティック、つまり色や形じゃなくて デザインをするという領域がありますねということです。で、無地は必ずしもハプティックかどうか、これはまた別の問題ですね。今日ハプティックと、センスウェアでエンプティネスの話をしたんで、もちろん無地をやるにしてももうハプティックっていうことを考えなくはないんですけど、それはちょっと違うコンセプトを持って分けて考えてください。まずそこを。
Okay, so with the three sort of product clusters, haptic, senseware, and emptiness or Muji, he'd like us to sort of think of them as separate phenomena for now. It's not that with Muji, the creation of something haptic, something that makes the senses drool, is not the goal. It's just not the sort of primary or central goal. It is there, but with Muji, the main goal is emptiness rather than that haptic kind of sensory tactility.
で無地に関して言えばね、つまり無地のプロダクツも広告も同じことなんですけども、なんか特別なブランドのようなものとしてなんか欲望の対象になっちゃいけない。つまりあれが欲しいと思うんじゃなくて、これでいいや、これでいいやと、We must have it じゃなくて It will do とかぐらいがいいのね。そういうような感じに無地のプロダクトは作ろうと思ってる。要するに海外の人は無地の見ると少し自分たちのモード違うんで魅力的に見えちゃうんだけども、日本ではごく当たり前のプロダクトとしてあって、それはブランドのそういうみんなが欲しがるっていう感じじゃなくて、これでいいやっていうか、これでいいやっていう感じはとても難しいんですよっていうことをまず言ってください。
Very interesting response. So he's saying that the central principle of design in Muji, as paired with the kind of advertising that we saw today, is basically to elicit a response in the viewer, in the person who sees the advertisement. And the response that they're going for is not, I see that and I want it, I must have it. Right? Instead, it's I see that, and as he said in English, that will do, or just a sort of an acceptance, a kind of naturalness of it. And so in Japan, Muji products are sort of almost taken for granted as something natural. It's just something that is, and that actually they have found that the most challenging thing, to elicit that kind of response, not so much of I must have it, which is relatively easier to accomplish.
So we have to avoid the sensitive. We must have it. This will do. It's very great, very great. But it is very difficult to make a position of this will do. So this will do is the world of the unconsciousness. The consciousness is very easily to be designed, but the unconsciousness is very difficult to be designed. So,
well said. Other questions? Yes.
Kenya, I was just wondering if you go a little deeper into how you think that, I guess, kind of from a marketing standpoint, this will do works better than something as I want to have it. I need it, you know?
これでいいやっていうことと、買わなきゃいけないっていうことを、マーケティングの視点から考えるとどっちの方がいいですか？その I must have it っていうことの方が強いんじゃないですか？
いや、気がついたら買ってしまっていたということの方が強いと思う。
He says actually between the two, it's even stronger if it can put you in the kind of situation where you say, "Oh, I bought it. I just bought it." Right? Rather than I must have it, I must go out and get it. You don't even think about it. It just happens and it's done, and you have it.
要するに登山をするときにみんなが捕まる木っていうのがある。 ね、登山山を登る時ね、そのみんなが捕まる木ってそこはツルツルになってる、ね、でそんなものをそこに誰もそんなものを置かない。だけどもそのみんなが捕まるツルツルになってるものがそれが生活の中にいっぱいある。それを見つけていくっていうのが無地なんですよね。
Think of it like going hiking, and you climb up a mountain, and there's a tree that's perfectly positioned so that everyone grabs onto the same spot as they pass. And that spot gets softer and smoother with the passing of people climbing the mountain. That is what Muji is trying to become.
We must grasp. We must grasp it. No, this will do. So, you understand?
I think we might have time for one more question.
Okay.
It seems like a key word that we might want to add into this would be affordance. The idea that what you're talking about is almost the difference between decor and the affordance. The affordance is that doorknob that you don't even notice you're grabbing, yet the door opens. And the decor is the door that's so decorated that it draws your eye. And I'm wondering if that's one of the ways. I've been trying to get my head around the difference between nothingness and emptiness. And I think that emptiness may be nothingness that has an affordance to be filled. Does that take us even deeper into obscurity, or is that maybe a place that we could move to?
It's going to require a little translation to me. Just to make sure I follow you. That was okay. So you're.
Affordance in industrial design parlance, for example, is that which allows us to grab onto or enter or engage with system, object, space.
Mm-hmm.
And the classic Don Norman concept is a doorknob.
Mm-hmm.
The doorknob is that which you don't even need to know about it. It's there, you grab it. And I'm wondering if this has something to do.
アフォーダンスという用語はご存知でしょうかね。私には全然知らないんですけれども、でですからそのドアのハンドルっていう例を挙げてるんですけれども、で考えずに手を伸ばして使ってしまってドアを開けるっていうものが魅力的に目がなんか無意識に奪われてしまうっていう格差があるんですよね。でなんかその格差をについて考えてなんかそれは何かもしかしたら無地と関係あるかなとあれが分かるようになりたいんですけど。
もちろんアフォーダンスというのは新しいプロダクトデザイン、ものを作っていくときに関してアフォーダンスというのはすごくいいヒントをくれると思いますが、アフォーダンスと無地はもちろんその関係づけて説明することはできると思います。だけど無地はアフォーダンスではない。だけどもおっしゃることはとてもよくわかる。つまりアフォーダンスは無地と直接関係はないけども無地を説明するその視点としてとても有効だと思います。そういうことをまず言ってください。
Affordance and Muji are not explicitly linked in any conscious or intentional way, but he does see how using the concept of affordance, a lot of Muji products in their actuality could be sort of explained or conceptualized, yes, even though it's not there as an original motivation. All right, and with that, I think we'll close. Did you... Oh, yes, a quick announcement from Anishi.
I haven't met anybody here. I came in late. He has a book called Designing Design with everything he talked about written out in detail. It got stuck at customs at LAX, so we're supposed to have them on sale, but they got stuck at customs. So if anybody specifically wants a copy of the book, we will eventually have it in the LA area, but find me and I'll help you figure out how to get a copy.
Is this the Lars Mueller Publishing?
Yes, yeah.
We can probably make that available at the bookstore here for you as well. Well, we can probably also make that available at the bookstore here on campus. I know a lot of you here are students. And okay, possibly.
We'll figure out a plan.
Any closing words? 最後には何か
Okay.
最後の挨拶
いいです。はい。
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kenya-san. Thank you.